I was completely caught off guard when my husband Jonathan suddenly suggested that I should move back in with my parents, despite the fact that they were already living with us. His abrupt statement left me speechless. He spoke as if it were the most reasonable idea in the world, and with a sharp edge to his voice added, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue. If you don't like it, I'm fine with divorcing you." His attitude had grown increasingly distant and cold in recent months, and I had been silently dealing with my own frustrations. While I had fleeting thoughts about ending our marriage, I never imagined he would be the one to push me out of our home, especially when I was the one covering our $3,200 monthly expenses. Did he even acknowledge that? As I stood there in shock, he became more impatient. "Get out now. My parents don't feel comfortable with you here," he insisted. I had no idea why I was suddenly the one expected to leave, but at that moment, I decided not to argue. "Fine, I'll take all my things with me," I said. He looked smug, satisfied with my response. "Then do it," he muttered before walking away. Without hesitation, I called a service to sell my belongings. "My name is Betty, and I live with Jonathan, who is 3 years older than me. We met through mutual friends, and what started as a simple introduction turned into an entire day spent together. He shared his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was immediately drawn to his deep, smooth voice. I've always had a thing for voices like his." Apparently, the attraction was mutual, as we exchanged numbers and started planning more meetups. Our relationship developed naturally, without any formal, "let's make this official" conversation. It just happened. At the time, I had just graduated college and was stepping into my career. Dating someone older, someone with more experience, felt exciting. My friend Laura voiced concerns about the age gap, but I shrugged them off. "It's only 3 years," I reassured her. I genuinely liked Jonathan and believed he cared about me too. Eventually, Laura dropped the subject, trusting my judgment. After 2 years together, marriage became a topic of conversation. I had already introduced Jonathan to my parents, who were thrilled about the idea. I often wondered when he would propose, and in true Jonathan fashion, it happened in the most casual way possible. We were lounging in my apartment when he suddenly asked, "Do you want to get married?" I answered just as casually, "Sure, let's do it." That was that. No elaborate proposal, no grand gestures, just a mutual decision made in the moment. Afterward, we visited each other's families, and it became clear that I didn't quite fit in with his. Their home was over the top, decorated in a way that tried too hard to look luxurious. His parents dressed in flashy designer clothes, dripping in expensive jewelry. Everything about them screamed an obsession with appearances. It didn't take long for me to realize that we had completely different values. I doubted I'd ever truly connect with them. His mother even made a cutting remark about my looks during our visit. I was stunned. How could the family of the man I planned to marry be so openly rude? But I reminded myself, I was marrying Jonathan, not his family. I resolved to keep my interactions with them to a minimum. Once we were married and settled into our condo, I began noticing subtle changes in Jonathan. He seemed distracted, emotionally distant. One day, out of the blue, he asked, "Hey, who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" Several guests had worn blue, so I wasn't sure who he meant. "Which one?" I asked. "The one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Laura," I guessed. "Yeah, her." His tone was off. "What about Laura?" I asked, sensing something was wrong. "Oh, nothing," he said, brushing it off. "I just thought I saw someone who looked like her on my way to work." His expression was uneasy, and before I could press further, he let out an awkward laugh and left the room. Not long after, Laura called me, excited. "Betty, my boyfriend's coming back to Canada next year," she gushed. Laura and her boyfriend had been together since high school, staying strong despite the distance while he worked abroad. Their relationship was inspiring, and I couldn't help but tease her. "Do you think he'll propose when he gets back?" She giggled. "Maybe. But you're always jumping ahead, Betty." "Well, if he does, make sure I'm at the wedding," I joked. "And I expect another heartfelt speech like the one you gave at mine." She laughed. "Of course." Around this time, Jonathan's schedule became more unpredictable. He started coming home later and later. "Working late again?" I asked one evening as he walked in. "Yeah, what, do you think I shouldn't work?" he snapped, instantly defensive. Jonathan was still chasing his voiceover dream, and while I admired his dedication, it was starting to take a toll on us financially. He worked multiple part-time jobs to pay for his training, but all his earnings went toward that, leaving me to cover everything else. Saving money together felt impossible. The cracks in our relationship were widening. As his hours stretched even longer, my concerns grew. Are they overworking you? I asked, trying to sound supportive. It's just a part-time job. They shouldn't be pushing you so hard. He brushed me off, unwilling to talk about it. But I knew this relentless pursuit of his goal was driving a wedge between us, not just financially, but emotionally. One day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I'm worried, I admitted. I'm fine, he snapped. More money is always better. Just keep your opinions to yourself. His tone was harsher than ever. By then, he barely acknowledged me, never even saying my name. When we spoke, he referred to me as you. Nothing more. The gentle voice I once loved had turned cold and distant. Jonathan had also picked up drinking. His voice had become rough and strained. Ironic for someone who wanted to be a voiceover artist, but he refused to take care of himself. Conversations became rare, then non-existent. He started avoiding me, even in our own home. Amid all this tension, Laura called, saying she had something important to talk about. Desperate for a break from the suffocating atmosphere at home, I agreed to meet her at a cafe. When we got there, she picked a booth with a clear view of the counter. You chose this spot on purpose, I said, narrowing my eyes. Sensing her unease, I asked, is something wrong? She nodded, her expression serious. I had the staff check for anyone acting suspicious. A suspicious person? Is that what's been worrying you? I asked with concern. Laura took a deep breath and explained that since leaving her job a month ago, she'd felt like someone was following her. The feeling had gotten worse, and lately she sensed someone watching her even on her days off. She picked that specific booth, hoping her stalker wouldn't overhear us. Did you report this to the police? I asked. I did, but they said there's nothing they can do unless the person makes direct contact. She sighed in frustration. What about your boyfriend? He's coming back next month, right? Maybe he could help. I'll tell him when he's back, but I wanted to talk to you first. You're closer, she said, her voice trembling. I could see she needed someone she could trust, and that scared me even more. Laura hadn't gotten a good look at her stalker, which only made the situation more frightening. Determined to help, I started keeping an eye on her from afar, trying to spot anyone following her. But as I focused on Laura's problem, my own concerns about Jonathan grew. Then, the shocking truth came out. Jonathan was the one stalking her. I saw him after his shifts, lingering outside Laura's workplace, following her when she left. The sight of him creeping behind her, with that disturbing smile, turned my stomach. My best friend was terrified because of him. The man I once loved had become a stranger. I immediately told Laura what I discovered and insisted she move out for her safety. Her colleagues helped coordinate everything, ensuring she got to her new home safely, far away from Jonathan. But as Laura found safety, Jonathan's anger grew. One day, out of nowhere, he burst out, "My parents are moving in, so you need to leave and go back to your parents' house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why should I leave? I'm the one paying the $3,200 rent every month, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Well, if you have an issue with that, we'll get divorced, he snapped. I had thought about divorce before, but hearing him say it so easily stunned me. However, his arrogance only fueled my determination. The next day, I arranged for a company to sell all the furniture and appliances I had paid for. When the workers arrived, Jonathan's cocky attitude quickly disappeared. What's going on? He demanded, his voice shaky. They're here to sell what I bought, I said coolly. But my parents are moving in. How can they live here without furniture? He protested. That's your problem now, I replied. You told me when we got married that you were broke because of your acting classes. I paid for everything, rent, the furniture, all our living expenses. Now you can manage the $3,200 rent on your own. His face drained of color as reality set in. You think this will stop me? I'm already close to a wealthy woman, he boasted, striking a ridiculous pose. His words made me sick, but I stayed composed. Knowing how he had stalked Laura made his talk of being close all the more twisted. The man I thought I had married was gone, and I had no intention of staying in his life. Laura wasn't interested in him. She had been with her high school sweetheart for years, and they had plans to marry soon. Jonathan's delusions would soon crumble, and I didn't need to stick around to see it happen. When I brought up Laura feeling unsafe due to her stalker, Jonathan's face showed surprise. "Wait, she thinks I'm a creep?" he asked, his shock genuine. "Yes. And you're lucky I didn't call the police on you," I said, my voice cold. "I didn't know she had a boyfriend," he stammered. "She chose me over some guy she hardly knows. They've been writing letters since they were kids. He's already successful and has her family's blessing," I shot back. Jonathan's face fell, finally realizing his fantasy was just that, a fantasy. The movers took the last of the furniture, and as they did, Jonathan tried to laugh it off. "I guess you're all I've got now," he said weakly, trying to sound relieved. "You've always supported my dream of becoming a voiceover artist." "Not anymore," I said firmly. "I've already filed for divorce. From now on, we'll speak through our lawyers." His confidence shattered as he clung to me, pleading, "Don't do this. We've been fine, haven't we?" I shook my head. "We've been falling apart since the wedding. The moment you found out about Laura's family's wealth, you became obsessed with her. Marrying you was a mistake." Jonathan collapsed into tears, but I felt nothing for him anymore. "Enough," I said, cutting off his crying. "I spoke with your uncle about the divorce. You'll be working for him now. As for your dream of becoming a voiceover artist, I won't be paying for it anymore. You barely practiced anyway. Time to face the truth." I turned to leave but gave him one last warning. "Stay away from Laura. If you don't, I will call the police." With that, I left, determined never to look back. For now, I moved back in with my parents, but I was already planning to relocate closer to my job. Jonathan ended up working for his uncle, and his parents, who hoped to live off Laura's wealth, had to move in with him. The irony was satisfying. Jonathan, his parents, and their entitled attitudes were now all under his uncle's control. I felt an immense weight lift as I distanced myself from them. Age wasn't the issue. I simply vowed to be more careful in choosing my next partner. Later, Laura invited me to her wedding. Meeting her fiancé and seeing them so happy filled me with genuine joy. As I celebrated with them, I was grateful for my fresh start and excited about what lay ahead. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay tuned.